studio at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Charlotte. This is Adrian Brown with As the Buckle Turns. I would like everybody, as always, to follow, like, subscribe, share. All the links for everything will be in the description to wherever you find the podcast. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Twitter, Tumblr. It's all out there. Please give likes, subscribe, shares. Give some 5-star reviews, because it all helps the podcast. It all helps us all grow. Like I always say, we're all in this together, because I'm doing this for all of us. Not really doing this for me. I'm doing this for every single one of you who listen. Whether you give a honest critique or, if it's not your cup of tea, so be it. I'll do everything I can to improve this, because this is an educational thing for me, and I really do want to constantly see where this goes. So, here's where I am with this right here, what I'm going to get into today. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm an uncle. I'm a godfather. I have a mother. I have 2 sisters. I have 3 nieces. I have 2 goddaughters. I'm by no means some over-the-top male feminist, but I also in no way subscribe to this new age toxic masculinity. I appreciate the women in my life. I appreciate any female that I've come in contact with that has made me who I am. So please, when I get into this, if you happen to be a woman that's listening to this, understand that I am an ally in all ways possible. I am not in any way attempting to diminish the things I'm about to talk about, the accomplishment of the women that I'm about to mention. I'm not downplaying them in any sort of way, shape, or form. It's just, as a pro wrestling fan, there's levels to certain things that when it comes to entertainment value and pecking order that you've seen in life, and you understand how things work. And I know sometimes empowerment of things can tend to get over the top, and this is an over the top business in which I talk about here on this podcast. However, if things aren't really in their I guess I shouldn't say rightful place, but if things are not managed the way to get maximum impact out of them, sometimes it can probably hurt the business more than it can help it. And that doesn't just go for an entertainment-based product. That can go for any product. And when I think about women's wrestling, or women in wrestling, my memories from when I first started watching it, women, quote, did wrestle. Women had their place, but the women in wrestling, they were, they were, how do you say, they were bridges for storylines. They were filler, almost, shows. Now, there were some women you couldn't deny were a bit bigger than their roles. But at the same time, a lot of times you understood what the majority of your fan base was. The actual majority, unlike how some people are or don't seem to understand what that majority is now. You understood what the majority of your fan base was at that time. You knew what they wanted to see. You knew what they didn't want to see. And you wrote the shows accordingly. Now, when I was younger, now I can remember the women of wrestling, they mainly consisted of, Baby Doll. Yeah, I remember I was watching the NWA at the time. So women like Baby Doll, Woman, Missy Hyatt, women like that, not necessarily wrestlers.
just personalities, valets and things like that. And you notice they were out there, and but it wasn't necessarily, they weren't necessarily like a main part of any storyline. Sometimes you would have matches where, like, if I win, I get your valet for a night, or things like that. Or, I cannot remember her name, but the woman who would accompany Jimmy, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin to the ring, spraying the activator into his hair. She would spray it in the eyes of his opponent and things like that. I mean, the women they had there, they were only called upon, to get heat. And even if they did wrestle, like I said, they were just filler on cards. But I look at the way things are now. I absolutely am proud of the women. The way they've elevated their game, per se, with their athleticism, their ability to do things in that ring. It's like I was saying last episode. It is actually pretty impressive to see what they're able to do. And now with the recent announcement of WWE Evolution, the first ever all women's event in that company, I mean, it's pretty much come full circle with them, because I can remember when I was watching and caring about NXT. I watched those 4 horsewomen, Bayley, Sasha, Becky, Charlotte. I watched them all come through the ranks. And I watched them all. I could see their progression. I'm just like, you could tell all 4 of them women were going to be special. But I had no idea once all 4 of them ended up on the roster how far this would get. Because it wasn't just them. I mean, you had Nia Jax, you had Alexa Bliss, and even before then, you had other women who filled it out before then. You had Naomi improving herself. You had Natalya before her. A female woman, a female who was able to execute, if you will, the mastery of the Heart Dungeon. You have your other, more character-based, more not quite work-based women like Alicia Fox. And this is just WWE. Now, if you want to take it back to when all this really, really started, we're talking about going back to TNA territory when Dutch Mantel was booking the Knockouts. I mean, all this really started with them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and, get into semantics about who started it first, because I've said before, when you're talking about wrestling promotions, when you're talking about one, you're supposed to recognize that the other ones don't exist. Even as a fan, they do. But here's the thing. We know TNA did it first, but WWE's not supposed to acknowledge that they did it first. WWE as a company, as written into their own little universe, they get to say that this is the first. Just like TNA got to do the same thing with their knockouts. You see what I'm saying? And wow, I really, really, really am nervous about doing this topic. This is absolutely hilarious, because I feel weird because I feel like if I really go in on this, it'll diminish what these women are accomplishing. And I don't want to seem like I'm doing that. I appreciate any and all women in this business. I don't care if you're an executive like Stephanie McMahon. I don't care if you're a championship wrestler like Charlotte. I don't care if you're doing intergender matches in Lucha Underground like Ivelisse. I don't care if you're just a indie worker for life like Santana Garrett. Every single woman that stepped into this business, a business that was initially male dominated and probably just a boys club, and if you stuck around for double-digit years doing this simply because you love it, You deserve all the applause in the world for what you do. But I have to be honest, and 100% honest all the time. The rise of the women now, and I mean across the entire landscape of wrestling, has caused the devolution of this to where it is now as well. You know, I know last podcast I was talking about how not putting the belt on Batista was one thing. I have to keep it 100% real. The constant push of what these women have become now is also part of the issue. Because if you really, really look at the demographics of who watched wrestling initially, it was, men of a certain age group and men who like certain things. And say what you will about the Attitude Era. Again, we know how a lot of people feel about the quote quality of wrestling during that time. But the one thing you can't say about the Attitude Era is this: you can't say that stars weren't made. We're not just talking about pimps and porn stars and and things like that. We're talking about it made stars even out of the women. Think about it. China, Sable, the original Diva Sunny. And that's just in the WWF. And even even on the other side of the coin, you had Tori Wilson, you had Kimberly Page, Stacy Keibler coming over in WCW. These women eventually ended up becoming household names, doing probably the least amount of wrestling possible. Okay, there has to be. Okay, if you're going to form an opinion on all this, like I said, you're going to claim something as facts. You have to have the numbers to back it up. I'll always say that. Okay, how many analytics you throw out there, if you don't have metrics to quantify what you're talking about and back up your opinion, it's really just an opinion. Your opinion is not fact. The women were more popular the less they wrestled. As much as a woman like Sasha Banks would always like to come out there and get on that mic and talk about there are no more bra and panties matches and things like that, I don't recall a single woman in history getting hurt in a bra and panties match. I don't recall any woman getting separated shoulders or anything like that, or neck injuries, just by getting her evening gown ripped off of her. Okay. The women did wrestle, but again, the women always were the one element that always showed. The wrestling was always the least important part of it. It's just, and that's supposed to be the same thing with the men. But a lot of people still don't get that. And this is the evolution of talking about, no more divas anymore. I'm sorry, you were more popular. You made more money. You had more mainstream appeal when you were divas. Right now, it's just like, and this is part. I am struggling so hard to put my thoughts together on this. And I apologize if it sounds like it's rambling, but this is something I've been thinking about for a minute, and I've been wondering how I get it out without actually sounding, but anyway, like I always say, stream of consciousness, it's just going to come out. You don't want to be divas. You don't want to be seen as objects. You want to be seen as equal footing as superstars with men. You want it to be the women's division. You want it to be legit. But you know what I still constantly see? I'm still seeing fake colored hair. I'm still seeing over the top makeup. I'm still seeing super revealing outfits. I'm still seeing implants. I'm still seeing sexy pics on Instagram. So, if you don't want to be treated like divas, don't do diva things. Okay? You want to be seen as objects? Okay. How about ditch the revealing ring gear? Would that be fair? You want to be seen as divas? Okay, no more implants. Okay, there needs to be a balance of sex appeal and this desire for you to be athletic and showcase your ability to do things that the guys do. For one, you're never gonna outdo the guys. You'll compete with them, yes, but you'll never truly, unless you're written the way the Knockouts were in TNA. Like, and the only reason that probably was working most of the time is because this doesn't go over well a lot, but it's the truth. That's what happens when your top guy is a guy like AJ Styles. The women will probably draw more eyes when you have a nothing but a glorified, constant transitional champion as the face of your company. Now, speaking of companies, there are a ton of all women's wrestling groups out here, and they do excellent jobs of putting those women, and they do great shows together because they're constantly working together and they know each other so well. I mean, Shimmer, Shine, Rise, they all do excellent jobs. And even the women's divisions in smaller companies like Reality of Wrestling, they do a good job of showcasing their female talent. There's way more places for women to work now than ever, just like there are way more places to work than ever for the men as well. But again, is it really, really moving the needle on television? And the numbers say no. I appreciate everything these women are doing to make themselves, more noticeable and like holy crap, look what she just did. But when you've got a woman like Paige who has to, be quote retired at 24 years old for doing these unnecessary spots at house shows, that's a problem for me. You got an excellent athlete and character, a second generation star like Charlotte, who's able to do all these fantastic things in that ring, but she had a diva thing done to her as well with implants, and because of the things she's trying to do in that ring, one of them busted, and she's been out because of surgery to get it repaired. I'm like, that's an issue right there. You can't have it both ways. If you're gonna get out there and want to do, corkscrew moonsaults and all these enormously crazy bumps and things like that, I'm sorry, you're not gonna be able to do but so much and endanger yourself and cracking implants open. Because, like I said, pick one. Pick one. Are you a diva, or are you a quote superstar? You keep doing the diva things to yourself, but you want to be taken as a serious athlete. It's possible to be both. But if you really, really want to move the needle, you're going to have to make a choice. You should be thankful that WWE's constantly doing, Divas calendars and things like that, like they used to. But that made sure that those women didn't have to work so much because they still got residual income off their looks. And I don't understand what the problem with that is. I mean, no matter how many sexy photo shoots Lita and Trish did, they still went out there in that ring and they still did their thing. But they did it to the point in which they didn't really truly kill themselves. Of course, I say that even though Lita did damage her neck one time doing one of those crazy dives. Again, there are still limits to the body that which a woman can take. You don't have to truly one up the men. Do what you can within the confines of what you're given. Women have monetized their sexuality for years. It's one of the oldest things on this planet. And I don't see what the problem of still doing that is. I mean, none of these women now truly have a mainstream appeal. I mean, there were a couple I thought who were close, but, and here's the part where it might turn a lot of women off, but, here we go again. I don't care. But name one woman right now in wrestling that Playboy would be knocking down the door to call to do a shoot with. I mean, name one. Because I look at a lot of these women, they're all more chiseled than I am. Not saying that I'm some sort of chiseled freak myself, but seriously, they're all hard, athletic looking. Which is, I guess, is expected. You got a woman like Charlotte posing in the body issue because, the ESPN, they're about athletics. They're not about, like, putting people out there for sex appeal purposes. Even though I'm pretty sure a lot of the men and women that they put in that magazine, men and women who look at it probably, it's technically eye candy too, but it's not really mainstream. You can put a Charlotte in a magazine like that, but honestly, is Playboy knocking down the door to get Charlotte to pose completely naked in there? I seriously doubt it. Even though we know Playboy probably doesn't carry that clout anymore, like it used to during the 90s, but still, is any type of. I mean, I look at a lot of these women; they're all the same. I mean, I'm not even talking about the main women, Look at the independent wrestling women. They're all, I mean, a lot of them, they're built the same. They move the same. They probably darn near act the same. Mia Yim, Tessa Blanchard. Women like that. I mean, what happened to, it's possible to have women of all shapes and sizes too. That's what made Gail Kim versus Awesome Kong look so good. You got the hot Asian Canadian fighting the American, full size beast. There needs to be juxtaposition too, but majority of these women, they're all the same. A lot of them are the same body type, and they fall into the same category. And it's just, I think a lot of men are seeing this. A lot of the men who used to watch this, and I don't think they're turned on by any of that. We can have balance. We can have all. We can have good wrestling matches between some of these women. I mean, Medusa's my favorite female wrestler of all time. You want to talk about one of the original, quote, work rate females, you're talking about her. But here's the thing, even she eventually later got plastic surgery herself. And I think one of the main issues that I run into a lot with these things is this. It's like we can't even remotely, as men or women sometimes, consider anybody attractive. I think that might be the biggest issue here. It's like if they're an athlete or any type of athletic personality, nobody wants you to view said person as attractive. And the moment you start complimenting somebody on their looks as opposed to their athletic ability, there's that fringe that comes out again and says you don't know anything about wrestling. Okay, at one point in time, it was okay. It was cool. And it was expected to say, hey, that's an attractive woman. Like, hey, keep her on my TV. I love looking at her. That was the same. That's what we did with Sable. Yes, Sable eventually, got in the ring, but it's not like Sable was some sort of miraculously transformative in-ring performer. She did what she had to do within the confines of her character and the limits of her ability. Sable wasn't a groundbreaking wrestler, but she was a groundbreaking diva. And she probably made more money off with less effort than most of these girls are probably doing now, killing themselves. Heck, Sable still gets recognized when she comes, just simply because of the fact she's Brock Lesnar's wife now. There's girls on UFC, DVDs and replays in the ring with him in the octagon celebrating with her. Everybody knows who she is. They still know who she is. I wonder who will remember most of these girls now, especially if their careers are over by the time they're 30, because they're taking miles off their bodies doing all these crazy stunts. All because they don't want to be seen as attractive. I don't understand where that comes from. I was seeing complaints the other day. There's nothing Alexa Bliss can do is right. Even the fans of hers who dedicate accounts, and you can Google things about Alexa Bliss, and there are literally accounts dedicated to her body parts. Okay, so what? And some people don't like that. I'm like, why is it so wrong that we as men find a girl attractive? Why is it so wrong to you that another female finds a wrestler that you may not like attractive, but you're like, well, if that's the only reason that they like the person, they don't know anything about who cares? At one point in time, that used to be something that got people into watching wrestling. Being able to play off somebody being able to play off their looks and get money off of it and get eyes on the product. And it was just supposed to be a bonus that more people were tuning in. Now, the more that you sit there and you drive people away because of your myopic thinking about only wanting this to be an athletic spectacle as opposed to being about stars and drawing power, you simply driving these people away. It makes them feel uncomfortable. And it's like, I can't take these people. And the women are no different. Okay? You're mad that a lot of men are tuning out because they don't want to see women with more chiseled body parts than we have. What's wrong with that? Some men want to see attractive women on their television. If they don't, they're probably going to turn TV off. If they're athletic enough, that's a bonus. But for the most part, men, what we really want to see when it comes to women on TV, we really, really want to see attractive women. And there's nothing wrong with that. So stop making other people feel wrong for feeling the way that they do. And honestly, this has probably been one of the more difficult episodes I've recorded. I mean, I can feel myself talking right here, and my mind is all over the place because it's been crazy. I see the tweets, I see the comments and things like that. It's been so crazy out there. The constant talk about the women's evolution and the all women's pay-per-view and the Mae Young Classic Part 2. And I still just continually look at the ratings. Nothing's getting better, even though these women are getting elevated. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm blaming them because it's not 100% on them. You know, they just want to be treated as equals. And they just thought they were doing the right thing, stepping their games up. But it's these people out here who are constantly trying to make people like me feel bad because I enjoyed the women more when they were stars. I'm not downplaying what they're doing now, but I just know that when they were doing less, they were more popular. When they were doing less, they probably made more money. When they were doing less, their careers were a little bit longer. I'm sorry, I don't really care that Sasha Banks flat back bumps like a guy, as opposed to Alexa Bliss, who probably falls on her side. So does John Cena. Okay? You know, women flail around a little bit. You ever seen two women fight in real life? Okay? They don't clothesline and do moonsaults on each other. They grab a hair and sling each other around. They rip off clothes. They scratch each other's eyes out. That's what they do. And then there's this group of people who think they're just like these paragons of virtue, who get online and they tout women's wrestling completely like that, and they're just, but you know what, the one thing they won't do, and this is what I throw at a lot of them on most of the time, it's those dirt sheet writer guys and things like that. You know who a lot of them are. But I'm like, do you watch other women's sports as hard as this? I mean, if you want, are you trying your best to make the women equal with the men in a scripted sport, but are you trying to get the women at that same level in actual sports? Seriously, are you trying to make sure Serena Williams is making as much as Roger Federer? Are you trying to do that? Are you trying to make sure, Candace Parker pay is on the same level as LeBron James? Are you trying to do that? Are you showing up in drove as much as you love putting over the women at NXT takeovers and things like? Are you showing up like that? I don't know, to a WNBA game? Are you putting over, the Legends Football League as much as you're putting over the women in the Mae Young Classic? See, I can continue on and on with this. They can virtue signal all they want over fake sports. But if you're not putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to legit sports, I question every single thing about that. Trust me, the WNBA tried at one point in time to compete with the men. They tried to give them almost as many games as the men did at one point in time. But early on in its years, they found out the women couldn't take the wear and tear on their bodies because a lot of women, star players, were coming up with ACL injuries. It's just something they were more susceptible to. They had to shorten the season. They had to shorten playoffs. They understood the limitations. And they've probably gotten more out of it now than they ever have when they tried to compete with the men and show they could do everything that they could do. But the limitations of those women's bodies proved they couldn't. And they've learned. There's a reason. There's the same thing with women's tennis. There's a reason women don't play 5-game sets. Okay? Because none of this is going to sound nice. None of this. But again, I really don't care. So in summary, you don't want to be treated like divas. Don't do diva things. And if you're going to keep uplifting women's wrestling out there and you're not uplifting other women's sports, you're phony. Thanks everybody for listening. This probably wasn't necessarily the best of moods on my 10th episodes, even though I probably uploaded more than 10 so far, but episode 10, this hasn't been the most milestone episode ever, but again, maybe I'll pick it up next week because analytics and metrics are going to be on the menu soon. Can you really analyze and apply actual metrics to something that's scripted? Think about that. So that's the buckle turns for this week. New episode drops every Saturday unless I say otherwise. As usual, give a like, follow, subscribe, share, review. Until next time, this is Adrian. This has buckle turns. See you soon.